Welcome back, everyone. Frank Moore here with the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. And I'd like to invite you to download my documentary book for free by going to my website, the End Times Research Ministry. That's www.endtimesresearchministry. And once you get to my site, just look for the April 7th link right here. Click the link and you could download my book for free. Now, yesterday and also the day before, I was giving you connections between the Word of the Lord in relation to pestilence, as we see in Matthew 24:7, and also in Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 3, where the Lord tells us that in the last days, what we should be looking for is fish, birds, and animals dying. So let me read Zephaniah for you in case this is the first time you've ever heard about it. You've been seeing the product of it on the news, but you may not have been able to make the connection. It says, I will sweep away both men and animals. I will sweep away the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. The wicked will have only heaps of rubble when I cut off man from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. So my question to you, as you can see I propose this question here, what would stop you from believing God's warning to us as given in Zephaniah 1:3? And the only thing that I can come up with is either you flatly reject the word of the Lord and you mock the word of the Lord and you mock his signs, which there are a lot of people who are doing. And of course, they're going to have to pay the price for what they're doing. But Satan doesn't want people to believe these are the last days. Satan doesn't want people to believe that the Messiah is coming back or will ever come back, for that matter. But the Lord has given us so many signs, and what I'm showing you today is just the tip of the iceberg. If you want all of the signs, please download my book today for free, and you'll get a good look at all of the different signs and how I make the connection to what's actually happening. Now, as I said a couple days ago, and then yesterday, there was other news articles that came out showing us that the fish, the birds, and animals are dying, and in large numbers. Let me go to the first one you'll see here with a headline here, but I'll go right to it.
What we're seeing is a large number of California sea lion pups who are coming in underweight. We're currently in the middle of what's called an unusual mortality event, which in this case can include sick animals, which is more of what we're seeing, rather than animals that are coming ashore dead. Well, typically in a given year we can expect to see about 50 intakes between January and March. This year we've had over 400. And we can expect to see a healthy animal weighing in at about 50 or 60 pounds. We've been seeing them as light as 20 or 25 pounds coming in. The primary treatment is getting some weight on these guys.
So, all right, there you have it. We have, and since I live close to the Santa Barbara, and I see this on the local news, that this is a major concern, and they're trying to find out why these pups, these sea lion pups, are washing up. Now, this is not unusual for me because I've been tracking these kinds of articles, and come to find out that it is happening in a large part around the world. So there is definitely signs of the Zephaniah 1:3, and of course we are in the birth pangs, and it's going to get worse. And as the waters warm up, or whatever the reasons are, whether it be the red tide, the algae blooms, these brown blooms, or the red blooms that kill off life in the ocean, only God knows. But we do know we're seeing deaths being reported, just like Zephaniah told us we were going to see in the last days. Now, let me move down here. You'll see an alarm over the vanishing frogs in the Caribbean. And just like, I'm not going to spend too much time there, but there is, in different parts of the world, we're seeing the animals starting to die off in large numbers. And this article came out of Puerto Rico, and it has to do with the vanishing frogs. And they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. There's a lot of weird things going on, a lot of mysteries that the scientists don't know why the animals are dying. Now, let's take a look at Romans 8:22. This is where Jesus tells Paul Look what he says. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of birth, childbirth, together until now. And so, like in Mark 13:8, where the Lord said, we were going to have birth pains in the last days, and Paul, he mentions it again in Romans 8:22. The pains that the creation, the earth, is calling for the redemption, calling for Christ to come back to redeem not only human beings, but the earth, God's creation. And we're seeing a lot of weird things taking place. We're starting to see sinkholes around the world like we've never seen before. And I've posted this information before, but it keeps coming in. And I wanted to show you what I believe is the creation calling out for God, groaning. And I'm going to start off with this first one. It says, the giant sinkhole swallows 3 buildings in central Russia. Now here's a video of it. Here's the headline. I put it in blue for you. I'm going to play the video. You won't understand it because it is in Russian, but at least you'll be able to see the pictures of what's going on.
Новгорода. Они должны дать оценку, будет ли продолжать расти образовавшаяся воронка или ее состояние стабилизировалось. Тогда, возможно, людям разрешат вернуться. Изба здесь рухнула и полностью развалилась. Пострадали еще 2 здания. Зелутурлино ждут специалистов по карстовой защите из Юрий Чухин, Владимир Бессарабов, Первый канал, Нижегородск.
I believe what you're seeing here is there were 4 homes that were swallowed up by another one of these sinkholes. It says the sinkhole, measuring nearly 85 meters wide and 15 meters wide deep, engulfed 3 houses in a town outside Russia's 5th largest city. So just like we saw a few weeks back where there was another one, I believe it was in Florida, when a young man was sleeping and all of a sudden his house caved in on one of these sinkholes. It's happening around the world. And if you don't believe me, you might want to Google the sinkholes, because it is a major deal going around, and people don't know whether the ground that they're standing on is going to be just cave in and they'll be sucked under the ground. It's happening in so many different places. So let's go back to my site for a second here, and you'll see that there's also a giant sinkhole that splits the grounds in central region in Portugal. So let me go there. Alright, so I'm at the site now. Keep in mind, this is also, if you don't speak anything other than English, you're not going to understand it because this is Portugal. But I wanted to give you the news so that you could see what's happening as far as the sinkholes.
Uma cratera com 100 metros de profundidade e mais de 17 metros de diâmetro. Foi este o cenário encontrado no meio de uns terrenos agrícolas na aldeia de Porto da Espada, em Marvão. Um grande e misterioso buraco que levou até outra dimensão. Quem o viu bem de perto.
Isto é uma coisa assustadora, não é?
Isto não é de extraterrestres, não é de OVNIs, não é nada disso, nada disso. É uma situação que acontece e muitas vezes há pequenos abatimentos, é mais habitual. Olhamos para o chão, um pequeno abatimento, uma pequena cicatriz, mas não passa disto.
A explicação vem de debaixo da terra, grutas e rochas calcárias típicas da zona de Marvão, que este ano foram bem regadas com a chuva.
O que aconteceu? Nós aqui tivemos um ano de muita chuva, muita chuva.
Obviously they're measuring it and just to see how big it is and probably trying to explain what's going on or trying to explain we don't understand. Alright, let me go back now because there's another report that you'll probably want to see that's a little bit easier on your eyes and your ears if you speak English. Here's that report. It's on the giant sinkhole splits ground in central region in Portugal. It says excess water in the soil may be the cause of geological phenomenon occurred in Marov in Alto Elentrio, I believe it is, which resulted in an opening of the crater about 100 meters deep and 17 meters in diameter. So pretty big hole, and it's pretty deep, ominous looking. But it's happening. We're seeing it again, as I said, more and more of these are taking place around the world. And of course, extreme weather, weird weather, and as long as we're on extremes here and weird events, take a look at this. Weird hailstorm in Omaha, Nebraska makes the news. So let's go over to that, and we'll play it to show you what's happened there.
John Mallory, we're live here at 132nd and Leavenworth. By the way, hail can apparently impact live shots. We're 2 hours after this came through here. Can you believe it? Look how it's still hanging around. How often does this happen? Usually we throw this into a cup and rush to put it into the freezer just to save some of the history that came through. It's weird. A lot of people are having trouble driving through this. I wonder if the city of Omaha has a protocol for plowing hail. Well, this was the surprise of the evening, I thought. Check out this video. It's at the Burke High School parking lot. Now, there's a band concert that was going on there tonight. You had elementary students, middle schoolers, high schools, hundreds of parents inside, and the hail was so loud, it was louder than the band music. Take a listen.
It was very loud. We could hear it. I mean, it was pretty loud. We had to kind of take a little pause before they went on to the next performance, so it was pretty noisy.
And you probably had no idea what was going on out here?
No. The principal did go ahead and tell us that it was hail, but for a minute there, we didn't know. We were all just kind of looking around saying, what the heck is that out there?
Now take a look at this. We were driving through it, and you can see the ruts. And I'll tell you from now, that video is about an hour old. The ruts are still out here. It sort of makes you wonder, John Mallory, if it's going to be like this for the morning commute. I mean, it's weird. We walk and drive on a lot of different things here in Nebraska, snow and ice, but it takes a little talent to walk on hail. Reporting live, Brian Mastry, Channel 16.
All right, so another weird event taking place. And let me go down to now, here's another one. It says, ice leaves thousands without power in southern Minnesota. So there's I'm going to go through, here's one of the first pictures of it. But, you know, the storms are coming. They're coming in the wintertime. They're coming in the summertime. Tornadoes, early tornadoes again this year. Let's take a look at some of these pictures. Obviously, the winds were really blowing, and with the ice that solidifies on the trees, with the weight, it's breaking the trees. I lived in New York at one time and been through some of these storms where the ice attached itself, and it sounds like miniature grenades going off when the trees pop. All right, so there you have it. Another one of those crazy storms. Now I'm going to get into a prophecy that is very important because I believe that we're on the cusp of seeing these major prophecies being fulfilled. Now, Paul the Apostle in 1 Thessalonians, and for those of you who have been with me for a long time, you should get very, very used to seeing this prophecy sign because it's in the news just about every single day. But for those of you that are new, Paul the Apostle told us what to look for, and I'm just going to read it. For when they shall say, peace and safety, now just put this in your mind now, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with birth, with child. All right, so look at this. As travail upon a woman with child. Now, I've already shown you two scriptures today about the birth pangs, and here we have this scripture talking to us about the same thing and liking the last days events to a woman with child. And they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Now, we know for a fact that Israel and the Palestinians In the past, they had peace talks, but they broke down. And they've been stalled for over 2 years now, and just recently, they've been trying to re-establish connections between the Palestinians and Israelis so that they would sit down and begin the peace process all over again. And of course, many of my posts, I've warned you what to look for based on what Paul the Apostle told us. And he told us that sudden destruction was coming when they're calling for peace and safety. Now, if he told us when they're calling for peace and safety, look for a peace agreement, then we should be looking for a peace agreement, peace in Israel. But that's not what he told us. He told us the exact opposite. He said, then sudden destruction comes. Now, let me just bring you up to date what's going on, because they're trying to get these, they're trying to get the peace process established again, as I said. All right, so here we are at the article. Now take a look at this. Israel rejects Kerry proposal for renewing talks with PA. This is the Palestinian Authority. It says a fundamental disagreement between Israel and the U.S. regarding the renewal of the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations came to light during U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's visit to Israel. A senior Israeli official involved in the talks Kerry held in Jerusalem said that Israel poses Kerry's proposal to resume negotiations on the basis of discussing border and, remember the words that Paul gave to us, security issues alone. Kerry has approached the Israeli-Palestinian issue with much enthusiasm and is pressuring both sides to implement confidence-building measures and agree on a draft outline for resumption of the talks. However, after his second visit to the region this week, it seems that the Secretary of State did not correctly assess just how frozen or the standstill over the peace process is, and how rigid both sides' positions are. This is what Kerry is referring to when he left Israel, saying that he himself and the two sides have a lot of homework to do. And so I told you when they were going over there, well, I told you a couple of weeks ago when Barack Obama was going over there, don't expect anything to happen. Nothing major was going to happen. And the reason why I told you this is primarily based on what the Lord showed us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3 and 4. Because there is going to be war. And I believe that at a time when you see that the nations are spinning around trying to get peace, that's when the destruction is coming. Now we know that the destruction is going to come in the form of war, probably the Psalm 83 war, very, very soon. But let me go on to another one. Israelis, Palestinians agree Kerry's visit is a bust. Now this story came out yesterday. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry wrapped up his most recent visit to the region on Wednesday, declaring it very constructive. Now if he was honest, he would have said something like, geez, guys, sorry, we couldn't get it together like the rest of the world leaders in the past 50 years couldn't get it together. But they want to save face, and that's the way politics are. But the Israeli and the Palestinian officials he met with were not singing the same tune. Kerry was dispatched to the region to follow up President Barack Obama's visit and accompanying charm offensive last month. He didn't charm anybody. The news media in the United States would make it look like he was a savior going over there, but obviously this man doesn't have the ability to get peace between Israel and the Palestinians. But there is one coming that will do this, and that would be the Antichrist, who will be unlike President Barack Obama. Barack Obama is weak in comparisons to what's coming. The man of sin is going to be so powerful, so dynamic, worldwide, that he is going to forge a 7-year agreement we see in Daniel 9:27. But the peace process that's falling apart now is leading us to the fulfillment of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where the sudden destruction will come in the last days. And this is why I keep bringing you this type of information, keeping you up to date on what's going on. Now, at the same time that there's talk trying to get talk back again in Jerusalem, we see Jerusalem being fulfilled in prophecy based on what we see in Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. And for the new people, I'm going to read this. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about. And when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth are gathered together against it. Now, what we know for sure is before it's all over, everyone is going to be coming against Israel. And the reason why the whole world is coming against Israel, if you know the background, you'll know that Satan is trying to destroy the nation of Israel, is trying to destroy the Jews. He's been doing that for a very, very long time, trying to stop Bible prophecy from being fulfilled. He figures that if he can kill off the Jews, he could stop the Messiah coming. But obviously that's not going to be the case. Jesus Christ won victory when he died for us on the cross. And he owns this earth, and he's allowing things to transpire to fulfill all the requirements, but he is going to possess this earth and Jerusalem when he comes back. But at the time that he comes back, everyone, as you can see here, all the people of the earth are going to be gathered against it. Now let me show you just a cosmic of what's going on. And you'll be able to see a lot more of this if you Google Zechariah 12:3, everyone coming against Israel. There's tons of articles about this. But let me go to this one article that I put up for you. And you'll see it says, the U.S. blames Gaza food shortages on Israeli sanctions. The UN humanitarian officials said on Wednesday that the Israeli sanctions on Gaza were hitting food supplies and would have serious effects if continued. In response to the deteriorating, and here we go again, look at this, deteriorating security, just like Paul talked about peace and security, situation in and around Gaza, Israel has announced a series of heightened restrictions on the movement of people and goods to and from the Gaza Strip, including closures of the Kerem Shalom crossing. The UN humanitarian coordinator James W. Rowley said, according to the AFP. Now, obviously, the UN is against Israel. They have more resolutions passed against Israel, that tiny nation, than any other of the nations in the world, including nations who are listed as terrorist nations like Iran and Al-Qaeda. And so news like this coming from the UN doesn't surprise me, because they're just fulfilling, in part, Zechariah chapter 12, where everybody's coming against Israel. Now, in relation to why Israel is doing this, let me go to another article here for you. This article, and bring it up for you, came out a couple days ago. The headline, Israel closes Gaza crossing after several rockets fired. Of course, the news was generated out of Jerusalem. Israel shut a crossing with Gaza after rockets were fired from the Hamas, which is mentioned in the Psalm 83 war that comes against Israel in the last days. Hamas ruled territory at the Jewish state on the day it commemorated the Holocaust. The military said it closed the Kerem Shalom terminal Monday after crossing would be open for humanitarian cases only. It said Israel has blocked the coastal territory since the Islamic militant Hamas took over in 2007. Now, so what we have here is the crossing was closed because Israel's enemy, Hamas, has been shooting rockets again into Israel. And so as long as they're going to continue to do this, Israel is going to have the borders closed. And so when you see articles that show you that the UN blames this food shortages on Israel, my God, the people in the UN must be blind, or they're so hard in their heart to what's going on, and they're so hard in their heart towards Israel that they can't see that Israel has to take measures like this to protect themselves. They can't just arbitrarily put down the borders and allow their enemies to walk across the line there without any borders. In other words, the gates, the bars, and the walls that they put up to keep those that are trying to kill the Israelis out. And so there's definitely going to be always shortages there if the PLO, if the Hamas and the Hezbollah continue to send over those rockets. And what they're doing, obviously, is the PLO in the Gaza Strip, along with the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the Fatah movement, they know that if they keep doing this, all they're going to do is make Israel look bad. And that's their goal. One of their goals is to make Israel look bad to the whole world. And of course, what they're doing there is that I actually, in the process of fulfilling Zechariah 12:3. So if I was one of the UN delegates, I would say to the Gaza people and to the leaders in the Gaza Strip, look it, we can obtain peace if you stop sending rockets and missiles and mortars into the Israeli territory trying to kill the Israeli citizens. And once that happens, and once they demonstrate that they're willing to actually sit down and talk peace without lobbing these instruments of death into Israel, nothing is going to change. As a matter of fact, it's only going to escalate until they decide, let's take them out, or at least attempt to take Israel out, and they will fulfill Psalm 83. So, in relation to what's going on in Jerusalem, the Lord tells us in Psalm 122, verse 6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. And I would do it twice. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper with thee. Because the people who bless Israel will be blessed. And the people who are blessing Israel know the significance of blessing these people, because in Genesis chapter 12, the Lord told us anybody that blesses Israel will be blessed. And so, blessing Israel, you will have a blessing on you. Now, if you want to be like the Palestinians, the Gaza, the Hamas, the Al-Qaeda, who's trying to wipe out Israel, the only thing that you're going to get is the curse, as we see also in Genesis chapter 12. Now, as far as the curse, there's three different prophecies here about that, and I just mentioned one in Genesis 12:3. But then there's also Joel chapter 3, verse 2, and also Zechariah 12:3. It's interesting that you'll see the 2s and the 3s here, even if they're reversed, but they're all 2s and 3s. And I think that the Lord may have done this to show us that all of these are dealing with the curse. And so anybody who tries to burden themselves over Jerusalem, we know, will be cut into pieces. Anybody who tries to divide the land of Israel, departs my land, we see it here in Joel. They are going to be led down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, or actually, what they're telling us here is destroy you. If you curse Israel, try to mess around with Jerusalem. Now, just to give you an example of people, what happens to leaders or what happens to countries who go against God's will, and if they allow this curse to fall on them because they go against the will of the Lord, take a look at this. It says, Guatemala formally recognized the Palestinian state. Guatemala has recognized the Palestinian as a sovereign state in the belief that this will help foster peace in the Middle East. So, obviously, Guatemala took the position against what God says in His holy word. So what happens? Well, take a look at this. Guatemala, at the same time that they just announced this of the Palestinian state, they recognized it as a sovereign state. Guess what? Guatemala dead, scores of ill with food poisoning, right? So automatically we see things that are happening to Guatemala. Now look at this. A 4.3 just hit Guatemala at the same time that they generate this news about making the Palestinian a starving state. Now, you can say whatever you want, but please, before you say anything, you should go into my book and look at all of the different things that have happened to the world leaders in their countries when they decided to go against God. And when they wanted to go against Genesis 12:3 or Joel 3:2 or Zechariah 12:3. Guatemala, if you had any brains, and if you knew the word of the Lord, and maybe they don't know the word of the Lord, and maybe some pastors there or some of the brothers in the church would be able to write the government at least to show them what's happened in the past for the nations who come against Israel. And this is why I wanted to bring this to your attention today, because Guatemala is learning a lesson. So with that, there's a lot of news, and I want to scroll up here again just to let everybody know that they can download my book today, and they can read the chapter in my book that will talk about God's curse and all of the events that have taken place around the same exact time that somebody comes against Israel. And so the only thing that I could say here is this. There's a road that people are going to have to follow. There's only two roads. One of those roads is going to lead you to hell, eternal damnation, a lake of fire where the gnashing and the wailing of teeth, and you'll never get out of it. But Jesus has forged another road via the cross that he hung on for our salvation. And if you take that cross, and if you receive Jesus and the work that he did of shedding the sins for eternity, because of his blood, his shedding the blood as the Lamb of God, the sacrifice of once and for all, if you take that road, you don't have to worry about the flames, because you will be spending eternity with Jesus Christ. Now, one thing is for sure. We know that we are living in the last days because we're seeing all of the things that Jesus Christ told us to be looking for at the last days. And all of this proof is in my book. But we do know that the time is closing in, and that road is getting much, much more narrow. And pretty soon, the choice will disappear. And what do I mean by that? Well, obviously, whenever the Lord is going to come back for his church to take us away, the other road is gone. The easy way, the way of grace, God's grace. He's given us the free gift of salvation that we don't have to earn. It was all done by Christ. It's Christ's salvation alone, not Christ's salvation and then something else. Christ's salvation on the cross has given us freedom from sin and a road to eternity. But when the church is gone, there's only one way to get into heaven, and it's going to be very, very difficult to do. You will have to face the Antichrist, you will have to denounce the Antichrist, and you will have to refuse to take the mark of the beast in the last days. And if you take that mark, the flames will be yours for eternity. And if you don't, then you will end up going on the road that you should have went on before, and that's eternity with Jesus Christ, but this time you will be a martyr for Jesus Christ, as we see in Revelation 24. Friends, the Lord has given us all the information we need. All you need to do now is to make the decision what road you're going to cross. You're going to stay on the one that leads you to heaven, or are you going to turn to the left and end up in hell? I hope you turn to Christ. God bless.